Welcome back to another video. So today the House is expected to vote to increase the debt ceiling, but besides that, there's a lot of new updates that are happening today, and I want to bring these updates to you. First, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, he says that the stimulus package will become the main focus. That is the goal for both him in the Senate and Nancy Pelosi and the House. They want to make sure the stimulus package or the human infrastructure bill or the Build Back Better plan, whatever you decide to call it, that will be the main focus. We know once the debt ceiling is raised, the next big move is to negotiate the human infrastructure bill. Whether it's going to be at 3.5 trillion or 1.5 trillion, we don't know. But according to Nancy Pelosi today, she stated that this bill will be around $2 trillion. She says that right now, going head to head against Senator Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema, the problem is trying to figure out the top line number. So she's going head to head against Manchin and Sinema. She's also cutting progressive short because they were wanting to see about 2.5 to 3.5 trillion dollars. That's what they were wanting, but that does not seem like that's going to be the case. According to Nancy Pelosi, she stated this bill is still going to be a couple of $1 trillion, but there has to be choices that will be made. Now, members have said, let's get the results we need without diminishing the transformative nature of this bill. Okay, but how do we do that? What is the process behind that? Even House Democrat Josh Gottheimer, who's a moderate, he tells Democrats, stop blocking the infrastructure bill. Send the infrastructure bill to the president's desk and immediately get shovels in the ground and people back to work. We have seen the jobs report over the past week. It was not great. Many people did not come back to work. What we saw was we missed expectations by about 300,000 people? That was horrible. So now moderates are saying we need to ramp up our efforts to get the infrastructure bill passed so that we can start putting these pieces in motion. We can start getting shovels in the ground and getting people back to work. But again, we will see if that actually happens. Moderates today are very upset at the fact that the hard infrastructure bill was passed back in the beginning of August. Beginning of August. We are at the beginning of October. So that's September and October, that's 2 months ago, this bill was passed. It's been sitting there on Nancy Pelosi's desk because she does not want to put this up for a vote. What we know is that right now, Democrats are still waiting on the details of the human infrastructure bill because they do not know what the top line number is going to be, and they don't know exactly what's going to be in the bill. Moderates say there is still a considerable amount of debate and negotiations that need to take place before this bill can even pass, which is one of the main reasons why they're saying let's just pass the hard infrastructure bill. That's that $1.2 trillion bipartisan bill. Let's get that done, and we promise we will come back to the table. We will negotiate in good faith and get the human infrastructure bill passed as well. However, progressives cannot believe the statements that Democrats are making because they say that if they pass this, they lose all their leverage. And instead of a potentially $2 trillion bill, like Nancy Pelosi says, it might be closer to $1 or $1.5 trillion. So that's not something that they want to do. Now, one of the negotiations is what pieces of legislation are going to be included into this bill. Well, Nancy Pelosi said today, if there are fewer dollars to spend, then there are choices to be made. She said last night, the overall consensus is to pass fewer things so that Democrats can still have a transformative impact on families. That was her statement. It was a letter to Democratic colleagues. Now, when it comes to the main pillars of this bill, here's what you need to understand. Nancy Pelosi was asked if any of the main pillars would have to be cut. Well, the main pillars, just so you know, are universal pre-K, child tax credit payments, tuition-free college, right? Community college, paid family leave, and the Medicare expansion. Those 5 things. Okay. Immigration reform was on there, however, that got shot down by the Senate parliamentarians, so that's not one of the main pillars. It's just those 5. Well, Nancy Pelosi says that they won't cut any of these provisions, but they will consider paring back the number of years. So, for instance, let's say universal pre-K. Instead of starting 2 years early, maybe just start 1 year early. instead of 4 years of the child tax credit payments, maybe just 2 more years. And then in 2 years, Democrats can come back because they're hoping they win more seats in the House and the Senate. They hope President Biden gets another 4-year presidency, right? So in 2 years, their hope is to come back, renegotiate that, and extend it further than just 2 years. Maybe make this a permanent fixture. As far as tuition-free community college, right? We could see cuts there. Paid family leave, we could see cuts there. The expansion of Medicare, I've already mentioned this, but they've already pared it down. So instead of going from 65 years old to when you can start down to 60, they're going to leave it at 65. That's their cap right now. And as far as adding dental, vision, and hearing, those 3 priorities, there's been talks of only doing dental and vision, not hearing. So that could actually pare that plan down a little bit more. So we will see what happens there. But again, according to reports, this is going to be huge for children and families. Now, I get this all the time. Well, what about us on Social Security? What about us that don't have children? What about us that are not part of a family? Here's the problem. And this is one of the reasons why, according to many experts, this is why the Biden administration stopped calling this the American Families Plan, because it caters to families. Well, what about those without a family? What about those without children? What about those that are on Social Security, cannot work, aren't going to college, right? Don't get that child tax credit payment. Don't have the paid family or medical sick leave. What about them? Well, that's the reason why the Biden administration and the White House is calling this the Build Back Better Act, or the Build Back Better Plan. They want to get away from calling it the Families Plan, because now the American people realize there's a lot of people that are going to be simply cut out of this. And people on Social Security will be one. People without children will be another one. People that don't have a family, they'll be cut out as well. So it's not great news there. But speaking of families, here is something that I want to bring to your attention. Senator Joe Manchin, he's been pushing for a little while to attach a work requirement to the child tax credit payments. Now, this makes sense in a way that this is a child tax credit payment. It's a tax credit, which means you have to have some type of taxes, right? It's supposed to be paid out at the end of the year. And people that pay taxes and try to get a tax return or file their income taxes, they get that tax credit. So he's saying this is the only way we should be providing these payments is to people that are actually working. However, a new study today by the Center of Poverty and Social Policy says that there is a very small, inconsistent sign and statistically insignificant impacts of the child tax credits on employment and participation in the workforce. So this research is actually just proving to the fact that there's not a need for a work requirement for these child tax credit payments. And the research also shows that grandparents that are raising their grandchildren or relatives, right? They will actually be beneficiaries of these payments and this rule, because many grandparents or people on Social Security who are taking care of younger children, maybe their grandchildren or a relative, what's happening is if they are not able to get these child tax credit payments, they're actually being pretty much hurt by it because they cannot work. So if there's a work requirement attached to this, many elderly people would be hurt by this, or people on disability. So that's one of the reasons Democrats say we can't include this at this time, then this isn't needed. Now, one thing we did here today, and I thought this was pretty important, because today we actually heard from one of the House Democrats. This is actually the House Budget Committee Chairman, John Yarmuth. He says today, and he did a video on this, that he is planning on retiring in about 1.5 years. And this is about 16 years in office. What's going to happen is this is going to leave the door open for Republicans to try to win another seat in the House. Okay? And Democrats must do whatever they can right now to push for a popular piece of legislation to hopefully get voters on their side. Now, I want to break this down because I've talked about this in the past. One of the things that many experts have said, many politicians are saying, is we have to push for more popular pieces of legislation within the next human infrastructure bill, or else the American people will not vote Democrat in the upcoming midterm elections. Well, if you don't vote Democrat in the upcoming midterm elections, Democrats could potentially lose the House and the Senate, which would flip it back to the Republican majority. Many people don't want that. Some people say that this is what we must do because Democrats have no clue how to control the Senate or the House. But what I can tell you, the most popular piece of legislation, first, the main one, is stimulus checks. Those are the most popular piece of legislation right now. The other ones, okay, just give you an idea. The Medicare expansion is pretty popular. A lot of people like that. A lot of people like the child tax credit payments. That's a big one. That is a very big one. Another one, paid family medical leave. This is something that a lot of people support. So right now this leaves out universal pre-K. Even though that does have support, it's not extremely supported across the United States. But child tax credit payments, a lot of support there. Paid family leave, a lot of support there. Medicare expansion, a lot of support there. And the stimulus checks have an overwhelming amount of support. The problem is lawmakers at this time cannot push forward with the stimulus check because, well, there's really no money in this bill for a stimulus check. If we take $400 billion and put that towards stimulus checks, well, if it's a $2 trillion bill, that means we're taking 20% of the bill and putting it right towards stimulus checks. 20% of the funding is going to go to one priority. Some say that's just too much. So we will see what happens there. But I want to bring you some other news that came out today. These are actually some pretty interesting reports regarding retirement. And I want to ask you a question, so make sure you stick around for this. But today, a new report came out that shows when most generations are planning to retire. The pandemic made major changes, many cuts and shifts to the retirement age for multiple generations. For instance, baby boomers, they're mostly putting off their retirement plans for another 2 to 3 years. But yet Gen Z, they're actually trying to increase their retirement by actually speeding up their retirement plans to 2 to 3 years earlier. So that's a big shift, 2 to 3 years later and 2 to 3 years earlier. So, and I'm gonna ask you in just a second, but what are you trying to do? What are you doing right now for retirement? Here is when each generation is planning to retire, and let me know if you are in line with this. Are you kind of on the same page, or do you have a different plan for when you are planning to retire? So here's what we know. Gen Z, they plan to retire at 59.4, okay? Millennials, which includes me, 59.5. We got Gen Z, or Gen X, 64.3, and then we got baby boomers, 68.3. The survey, it also pointed to the fact that the average person now has about $98,800 saved up. This is actually an increase because last year it was $87,500. That's for retirement. Now, just to give you an idea, this means it's not $98,000 saved up in a bank account or a savings account or checking account, or $98,000 saved under your mattress. That's not it. It's $98,000 in total. Okay, that includes retirement accounts, cash savings, investments and things like that. So it does show that the American people are trying to save a little bit more right now when they can. But here's the problem. Most people say they will still need about $1 million in order to retire. Okay, that means the average person is still over $900,000 away from reaching that goal. Many experts say that right now the American people do not save as much money as they should and are not investing as much as they should into the future. And according to reports, the reason why Gen Z wants to retire much sooner as opposed to baby boomers is because they say they do not want to work for 50 years of their life just to enjoy the last 10. If you don't follow me on that math, here's how it breaks down. On average, people start working at the age of 18 years old. They work for about 50 years. That will actually take them to about 68 years old, okay? Then, the life expectancy here in the United States is a little bit over 78 years old. So right now, that would leave you with 10 years to enjoy the remainder of your life. And some people say that is not a way to live, to work for 50 years for somebody else and then go and enjoy life for 10 years when chances are you will not be very mobile. You will not feel like traveling around the world. You can't enjoy the different experiences like bungee jumping or skydiving or things like that. So they want to retire a little bit early. My thinking is, okay, as a millennial, 59.5. Yeah, a lot of people maybe want to retire then. For me personally, I would personally like to retire by 50 years old. No more than 50 years old. So that gives me, I'm 34, so that gives me another 16 years to work before I can officially retire. Now, we will see if that happens. I could retire now and I'd be just fine. My family would be just fine. However, I'm 34 years old. What am I gonna do? So that's kind of where many people are at. Some people retire very early and go and sit and do nothing and then kind of regret that they retired so early. Other people, they absolutely love it. So let me ask you, when do you plan to retire? What age would you be? And just give me an idea. How much money do you expect you need in order to retire at that age? So you can also answer down in the comment section below. But again, I just want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for continuing to participate in the questions here on the channel. And I do use these. I do like to look at them and try to give you feedback when I can. So again, thank you guys for doing that. But as always, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing. Hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.